Az ukránok a háborút elvesztették. Ezt a háborút Oroszország megnyerte. A kérdés csak az, hogy a nyugatiak, akik az ukránok mögött vannak, mikor és milyen körülmények között ismerik be, hogy ez megtörtént, és mi következik mindenből.
This is my video update on this Wednesday afternoon, August the 13th, coming to you from Larnaca, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the situation in Pokrovsk, a situation that is worsening for the Ukraine military by the hour. It is not looking good for Ukraine in the Pokrovsk region. There are reports which claim that the Russian military is now in the center of Udachnoye, which is on the west flank of Pokrovsk. So the Russian military is now operating on the west flank of Pokrovsk. They made a massive breakthrough on the north, the northwest, the northeast. And when you look at a map, you can understand the critical, disastrous situation which is unfolding for the Ukraine military in this critical region of Donbass. There are so many encirclements and cauldrons that have formed or are forming that it's hard to keep count of them all. And so what Sirski and what Zelensky are looking to do now, according to various reports, is that they are going to send Azov National Guard Corps. An Azov National Guard Corps is going to be sent from Kiev, from what I understand, to the Pokrovsk region, not to try and break through and try to salvage the Ukraine military, the Ukraine soldiers that are stuck in this region. The last count that I heard of is 15,000 Ukrainian soldiers are bottled up in this region, and they're not being sent, these Azov guys are not being sent to break them out or to create some sort of a breakthrough, but they're just being sent to try and stabilize the situation and slow down the Russian military momentum in the Pokrovsk region. An absolute catastrophe for the Zelensky regime, a catastrophe that is unfolding, quickly unfolding, as we approach the Putin-Trump Alaska summit. So let me read you from the X account of Officer The Opinion, who says, Pokrovsk, Dimitrov encirclement tightens, Ukrainian defense collapses. The Pokrovsk Dimitrov urban cluster is now in de facto operational encirclement. Ukrainian command keeps feeding fresh troops into the sector, blindly walking them into a future cauldron. Supply runs are reduced to night movements in the gray to avoid detection and destruction. Even ground drones ferrying supplies across fields are hunted down and destroyed by Russian operators alongside all remaining enemy armor, including tanks and IFVs. My personal opinion, this is no longer a defensive line. It's a killing ground. Kiev's decision to keep pouring forces into a doomed pocket is criminal, draining manpower and morale while ignoring the strategic picture. Once the lid shuts, the Pokrovsk-Dimitrov front will cease to exist. And this is coming from the X account of Yeroman, Pokrovsk direction. Russian forces took the center of the village of Udachnoye. So that's the situation in Pokrovsk, in the Pokrovsk region. Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, Konstantinovka, Udachnoye. It's all crumbling for the Ukraine military and for the Zelensky regime. Came off here, I believe. So the European the European Union, the Europeans, the UK. Where did this come off of? Is it from here? Probably. Maybe not. They are proposing a peace plan, according to the UK Telegraph. They have come up with a peace plan, and perhaps they're going to present this peace plan to Trump in the phone call that they have going on with Trump today, this afternoon, European time. They will be calling US President Trump the Europeans. I'll get into that in a bit. But according to the UK Telegraph, the Europeans, they put together this plan. Zelensky is on board with this plan, completely on board. And I will tell you what the amazing plan that the Europeans have come up with, what they're going to be most likely presenting to US President Trump this Wednesday afternoon. It is the European counter-proposal to whatever plan Trump and Putin are going to discuss on Friday in Alaska. And the plan from the Europeans, according to the UK Telegraph, is, drumroll please, the plan that they have come up with. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And I am very confident that that Putin and Russia and Trump, they're all just going to jump at this plan, right? So the plan is that the conflict will freeze on the current front lines. Everything will freeze, and Ukraine has a pathway to NATO. And Zelensky's on board with this. I mean, it's amazing that he's agreed to this. It really shows, according to the Telegraph, it shows that Zelensky is softening his position when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine and ceding territory to Russia. So everything's going to freeze in place, and Ukraine has a pathway to NATO. Why didn't anyone think of this before, right? Why didn't anyone think of this 3 months ago or 6 months ago or 3 years ago? Right? Just freeze everything. Whatever fighting's going on is going on. Let's just freeze it. And Ukraine enters NATO. Problem solved. Oh, man. The Europeans, everybody. Let's see here. The Telegraph says Ukraine prepared to cede territory held by Russia. Zelensky's softened position comes ahead of Friday's Trump-Putin peace summit in Alaska. According to the UK Telegraph, this would mean freezing the front line where it is and handing Russia de facto control of the territory it occupies in Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, and Crimea. Ukraine, while seemingly content with ceding some territory, will only agree to a peace settlement that offers robust security guarantees in the form of weapons deliveries and a path to NATO membership. So that's what the Europeans, with all of their conferences and their discussions, that's what they've come up with. Freezing the conflict, de facto, not de jure, de facto recognition that wherever Russian forces are located during this freeze, there will be just a de facto recognition, which means that later on, when Ukraine is allowed to rearm and the Ukraine militaries are allowed to rebuild, and as they're entering NATO, that they will be able to restart the conflict, because we're talking about de facto recognition. But everything gets frozen, and then NATO and Ukraine. That's it, right? Ukraine enters NATO, and it gets more weapons. It continues to get more weapons. So that's the European plan. It's a brilliant plan. The Italian publication, Corriere della Sera, they spoke to a Russian academic, as well as someone who they say is a Kremlin advisor, Dmitry Suslov. And according to Mr. Suslov, the plan that will be presented in Anchorage, at least with regards to the territory swap that everyone is talking about, will be that the Ukraine military leaves Donbass. They completely leave Donbass. And in exchange for the Ukraine military leaving Donbass, Russia will leave Sumy, Kharkov, and whatever Russian military is present in the Dnipropetrovsk region. That's going to be the land swap. And Kherson and Zaporozhye, things will freeze in Kherson and Zaporozhye. Let's go this way, actually. So that's the plan according to the Italian publication and according to their interview with Suslov. The land swap, I see that happening, perhaps that happens. That's in line with Istanbul Plus. I guess you could say that's in line with Istanbul Plus in a way. Ukraine military leaves Donbass, and what concession does Russia make to the United States? They say that they'll leave Sumy and Kharkov and Dnipropetrovsk. That's the concession that they make. So Trump can then present this to the American people as a 3-for-1. He can actually present it as a 3-for-1 territory swap, right? Ukraine is getting back three territories where the Russian military was located, and the Russian military and the Ukraine military, they leave basically one region, which is Donetsk, because Lugansk has pretty much been completely captured by the Russian military. So he can present it, he can package it as a 3-for-1 deal. Most people that are not following the conflict closely or in detail, that's what they'll hear from President Trump, and they'll say, "What a great deal." So I mean, I can see how that can be marketed and packaged, and the concession that Russia makes is not really much of a concession if you go by Istanbul Plus, because in Istanbul Plus there is no reference to Sumy or Kharkiv or Dnipropetrovsk. To be fair, Putin did not mention in June 2024 anything about the Sumy region. So that part I can see. The part about freezing Kherson and Zaporozhye, I don't know. In the Russian constitution, those are Russian oblasts in their entirety. So you freeze the situation in those two oblasts, and then what? Well, according to Dmitry Suslov, what could happen then, once the land swap is agreed on and the freeze is agreed on, what would happen then is of course Ukraine does not enter NATO. That's part of the deal, according to this Kremlin advisor. Ukraine does not enter NATO. There's no way they can get into NATO. And you put together a federal Ukraine, a constitutional reform in a federal sense. That is what Corriere della Sera, according to Suslov, is saying. The final agreement should also include the demilitarization of Ukraine and constitutional reform in a federal sense. So what could happen afterwards, if everything is agreed on and if this reporting is accurate, what could happen is that you could get some sort of a federalization of Ukraine. We actually talked about this in a Duran video that we made about a year ago, that perhaps the solution to the conflict and for Russia to achieving its goals of the special military operation without having to go all the way to Lvov would be a federalization. A United States of Ukraine, right? And so what you could have happen is that Kherson and Zaporozhye, through this constitutional federalization process, they fold into the Russian Federation, and then the other regions become states, autonomous republics in a way. And you diminish the power of the central government. You greatly diminish the power of the central government, and you increase the autonomy of the regions, the power of the regional governments. That's what Dmitry Suslov, according to Corriere della Sera, is proposing, a possible solution to the conflict in Ukraine, which will be discussed. In Anchorage, and according to CNN, the location of the meeting between Trump and Putin will be at the Elmenorf Richardson military base in Anchorage, Alaska, just outside of the city limits of Anchorage, Alaska. And so, according to CNN, the Trump administration, they were not so hot on the idea of having a meeting at a U.S. military base, having the Russian president fly into Alaska and the talks take place at a U.S. military base. Their thinking was that the optics are not so great with that, but given the time limitations, it was the only solution that the Trump administration could come up with and put together at such a short amount of time in order to ensure the security of President Putin. It was the military base. CNN mentions that in Alaska right now, it's tourist season, so it's also very difficult to pick a location where you could provide suitable security. And so that's where it looks like the meeting is going to take place, the Elmenorf Richardson military base. Lavrov and Rubio, they held a telephone conversation in preparation of the meeting. And they both said that they are committed to a successful summit between the two leaders. Even though the White House and the Kremlin, they're downplaying the meeting, or at least they're setting the expectation levels low, which is a smart thing to do, right? You don't want to set the expectation levels high. You want to set the expectation levels low and over deliver. That's the smart thing to do, and that's what they're doing. The White House is basically saying that Trump is going to meet with Putin so he can see what Putin has in mind, try to understand what Russia is looking for, which is nonsense because everyone knows what Russia is looking for. They've spelled out their terms in great detail, and those terms have been public for over a year now. But that's the narrative that the Trump administration is going with. And once again, to the people that have not been following the conflict in detail, they don't have any idea about Istanbul Plus June 2024 root causes. And so when the Trump administration says that they're going to meet with Putin, and Trump's going to meet with Putin to get an understanding of what he's looking for, that will work. That will work for most people who have not been plugged into the conflict in Ukraine over the past 3 years, or at least over the past year, from when Putin announced Istanbul Plus at the Russian Foreign Ministry. And as far as the Russians go, the Kremlin is saying that they're going to be meeting with the United States in order to normalize relations with the United States, a relationship that was badly damaged by the Biden White House. And there's much more to talk about than just Ukraine, according to the Kremlin. And their goal is to just get the relationship with the United States back on track. So that's what both sides are saying. Caroline Levitt, she spoke to the media yesterday, and she hinted at a Trump trip to Russia, which, if you go back to the February 12th phone call, the first phone call between Trump and Putin, that was in the readout from that first phone call before Trump went on his misadventure of listening to Kellogg and Graham and the neocons and tried everything that they suggested to try and defeat Russia, and all of it failed. That 6-month misadventure. Anyway, in the first phone call, Trump and Putin, they agreed that there would be a meeting in the United States, and then there would be a meeting in Russia. And so Caroline Leavitt, she hinted at some sort of a Trump trip to Russia. The Russian Ministry of Defense, yesterday, they said that Ukraine is planning a provocation on the day of the meeting between Putin and Trump. What Ukraine is going to do is that they're going to hit a hospital or some sort of a civilian facility. And according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, Ukraine has already moved in journalists to, I believe, Kharkiv is the location, or the Kharkiv region. And they've already brought journalists to the region so that they can report on some sort of a drone strike or missile strike on a hospital or some sort of a civilian building. And that's going to happen, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the day of the meeting between Putin and Trump. And of course, this will be blamed on Russia, and the journalists will write about it, and they will be blaming Russia. And this is all meant to sabotage the talks that are taking place. Let me read you what the Russian Ministry of Defense put out there. One second, let me find it. See if I bookmarked it and can find it. Here we go. Ukraine plotting new provocation to sabotage Putin-Trump meeting. A group of foreign journalists has already been taken to the city of Chugyev in Kharkov region in order to prepare a series of reports about residents of the city in the frontline zone. The ministry said the Ukrainian army is plotting a provocation strike using UAVs and missiles on one of Chugyev's densely populated residential areas or a hospital, which will be immediately recorded by the Western journalists brought in. So that's what they're looking to do. The Russian Ministry of Defense said that Ukraine is planning different scenarios, sabotage scenarios and provocation scenarios for Friday, maybe even before Friday, maybe after Friday. But that's what the Russian Ministry of Defense is reporting. So the phone call between the Europeans and Trump, that is going to be taking place this afternoon, my time, morning, midday, I believe, U.S. Time. And on the call will be U.S. President Trump, along with Vice President J.D. Vance. That's a good sign, the fact that Vance will be on that call. That means that the Europeans will not be successful in manipulating Trump before he heads to Alaska, because Vance is going to be there. If Kellogg was going to be there, then I would have said, that is trouble. That is trouble for the negotiations on Friday. But the fact that Vance is there, that's a good sign. But Zelensky is flying to Berlin so that he can be with Merz when they call Trump. Why? Why does Zelensky have to fly to Germany so he can sit down next to Merz as they call Trump? I believe Rutte is going to be on that call. I think Stubb from Finland will be on that call. Maybe Vandermath will also be on that call, though she's low profile now. She was so embarrassed by those negotiation talks that she's disappeared, man. She has disappeared. Man, Macron, is Macron going to be on that call? Because if there's one person that has influence and a sway, a way over Trump, some sway and a way to manipulate Trump, for some weird reason, it's Macron. But I don't think he's going to be on the call, actually. So I think it's going to be Merz and Rutte and Stubb and Zelensky and someone from the EU. they're going to be speaking with Trump and Vance. My prediction is that because Vance is going to be on that call, it is not going to be successful. Trump Vance to meet virtually with Zelensky ahead of Putin's summit. And Zelensky travels to Berlin to be with Merz, as they call Trump. Like a little kid, man. He's like a little child who has to run to one of his protectors. It's either Merz, it's either Stammer, it's either Macron. In this situation, it's going to be Merz. And he needs to be held by Merz as they speak to Trump. Oh, Friedrich, hold me, protect me. Unbelievable, man. He'll do anything to get out of Kiev. Any excuse that he gets to leave Kiev, Zelensky takes it, man. He actually posted a video of all the places that he travels to. Like a video montage of all the places he goes. Right? He's working hard, Zelensky. I don't think he's working hard. I think he's moving stuff around. Maybe that's the ultimate reason why he's going to Berlin. Maybe he's bringing some packages with him. I don't know. Packages go into Kiev, packages go out of Kiev. There's that Turkish newspaper, and I'm not going to report on it in detail because so far no other media outlet has picked it up. But there is the Turkish report, a newspaper in Turkey. Anyone from Turkey that knows the paper, let us know in the comments down below if this is a reliable news source or not. But they're reporting about the funneling of money from someone in Zelensky's circle, not Zelensky himself, but someone in his vicinity, who's already wanted for money laundering, from what I understand. And from what I understand, he's in France, or the French police, because there was an Interpol warrant on this guy. The French police have him in custody. Anyway, the report is that there was money moving to accounts in the UAE. Once again, I'm not saying that this is true. It's rumors. These are rumors right now. And the Turkish publication, I don't know anything about this Turkish publication, to be quite honest. So I'm not going to get into details of this report. But anyway, that's the phone call that is going to take place today. They are going to present their amazing, brilliant plan of a freeze and Ukraine into NATO. They're going to present this during the call. I'm sure they're going to try to convince Trump to take a hard line against Putin and to not negotiate anything with Putin and to not talk about territory swaps or anything like that. But my prediction is that this will not work because Vance is going to be right there. And Vance is no fan of the Europeans, that's for sure. Anyway, Orban, he gave an interview to a YouTube podcast. I believe the podcast is called The Patriot. And Orban, he just said it, man. He just came out and said it. Russia won the war. Ukraine lost the war. Not Russia is about to win the war, or Russia is going to win the war, and Ukraine is about to lose the war, or anything like that. Orban said Russia won this war. That's what he said. According to Reuters, Russia has won the war in Ukraine. Hungary's Orban says, "We are talking now as if this were an open-ended war situation, but it is not. The Ukrainians have lost the war. Russia has won this war," Orban told the Patriot YouTube channel in an interview. "The only question is when and under what circumstances will the West, who are behind the Ukrainians, admit that this has happened and what will result from all this. If you are not at the negotiating table, you are on the menu," Orban said, adding that he partly opposed the EU's joint statement on Ukraine as it made Europe look ridiculous and pathetic. When two leaders sit down to negotiate with each other, the Americans and the Russians, and you're not invited there, you don't rush for the phone, you don't run around, and don't shout in from the outside. Ridiculous and pathetic is what Orban said about the Europeans. Interesting statement from Viktor Orban. Very interesting statement indeed. But yeah, he just came out and said it, man. The war is over, according to the Hungarian Prime Minister. And he's right. The Europeans are looking really pathetic, really sad, because you have a negotiation taking place between the leaders of Russia and the United States, and they just can't shut up, the Europeans. They just cannot shut up. And even the UK is reporting on the fact that Starmer, the UK government, which is really weird coming from the UK government, they're telling the Europeans to just shut up. That's what they're telling the Europeans. They're telling them to stop making comments about this meeting, to stop trying to sabotage this meeting, at least in public, and to get people like Kaya Kallas, to just get them in line, man, because they're just talking too much. This is according to the Telegraph. Because the UK, they want to work in secret, right? The MI6 and the UK, they want to sabotage in secret. They don't like the fact that people like Kallas are running around and saying that they're going to sabotage this meeting in Alaska. Let me try and find the Telegraph article. Here it is. Britain issues warning to Merz and Macron over Ukraine. Britain has warned EU leaders, including Macron, Merz, and Kallas, to stop publicly demanding Ukraine's inclusion in upcoming Trump-Putin peace talks, fearing it could alienate Trump and shut Europe out. Yeah. The UK knows how to sabotage things. You don't talk publicly about these things. Just be quiet, let the meeting take place, and let us work behind the scenes to try and sabotage this rapprochement. That's the message that the UK is sending out. So anyway, that's Orban, and Orban was brought up by Trump the other day. So Trump is now listening to Orban, or at least he has Orban on his mind. And Orban, he's taken advantage of this Trump position on Project Ukraine, this position to de-escalate Project Ukraine, because over the past 6 months, when Trump was on an escalation trajectory, Orban tried. He tried to bring Trump to his senses, but nothing was working. And so Orban seemed to have been marginalized in his relation with the United States and Trump. But now Trump is talking up Orban once again. So if I was Orban, I would definitely capitalize on this. Absolutely. So let's do some more news and we can wrap up this video. It looks like China and India are going to resume direct flights, which is an interesting development. It shows that BRICS is definitely unifying. The tariff talk, the 100% tariff talk against BRICS, and the effort from the Trump administration to sow chaos within BRICS has had a reverse effect. You have Modi, who's going to be traveling to China. You have Putin, who's going to be traveling to India. You have Lula talking about holding emergency talks so they can discuss alternatives to trade. And now you have commercial flights, direct commercial flights between India and China. Bloomberg is also reporting that Russia keeps crude exports flowing ahead of Trump-Putin summit. Threats of additional tariffs on India hasn't impacted crude shipments from Russian ports. And why should it? Why would it and why should it? India gave their answer to the United States with regards to cutting off Russian oil, and their answer was no. No way are we going to do it. By the way, there are talks that there are reports which say that one of the goodwill gestures that will come out of the meeting in Alaska will be the resumption of commercial flights between the United States and Russia, which will be an amazing development. I think that is a great idea. That's an excellent goodwill gesture, an excellent development if that happens. And man, will that put a lot of pressure on the EU to do the same, which they will not. They will resist the resumption of commercial flights into Russia. But that would be a very welcome development. So the European Union, they are about to issue bonds. They are going to go into debt. They're going to issue bonds to raise money. The European Union claims that they want to raise money exclusively for weapons and for Project Ukraine, but we all know that this is a lie. And there are countries, let me get in the shade. Man, it's hot today. I should go in the water. The report claims that there are countries that are against this Euro bonds idea from Ursula, which is more than an idea. It's actually in the new EU budget roadmap, financial roadmap for the next 7 years, is for the European Union to start going into debt and to raise money. And the countries that are against this are Germany, countries like Germany, Finland, I believe the Netherlands. Because the thing is that once the EU starts issuing bonds, it starts going into debt, and it's going to be much more than just money for Ukraine and weapons. We know how these things work. Once they go into debt, that means that every country in the EU will be on the hook for that debt, right? They're going to raise money as a union, and they're going to go into debt as a union. And Germany and Finland, Netherlands, they're saying, hell no, hell no, we're not going to put our economies into an EU debt trap. Anyway, EU's appetite for debt sets up fight with frugal countries. Politico calls them frugal. That's right, they're frugal countries. Come on, just go into debt, man. Why are you being so frugal? Without much fanfare, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen proposed expanding Brussels' power to borrow hundreds of billions from international investors as part of the 7-year EU budget proposal that was announced on July 16th. It wouldn't be a carte blanche to borrow at will. However, under the plan, EU-level debt would be limited to financing Ukraine's war effort, responding to unforeseen crises, and making specific payments to EU governments. Right. That's it. The money that the EU is going to raise from bonds, from Euro bonds, is just going to be for Project Ukraine, for unforeseen crises, and to make specific payments to EU governments. That's it. We're going to go into hundreds and hundreds of billions of euros, perhaps trillions of euros in debt, just for these three things and nothing more. Right? Right. And everyone in the European Union, every country, every member state in the European Union is going to be on the hook for these eventual trillions and trillions of dollars that Ursula is looking to raise. Man, bad news for the European Union. So let's do a clown world, and we can wrap up this video. And in this clown world, we go to Stunning and Brave. Kaya Kallas, right? Yeah, Stunning and Brave. Kaya Kallas, who gave an interview to CNBC. And she said that the purpose of Putin meeting with Trump is for Putin to try and avoid sanctions because the Russian economy is in tatters. Anyway, the purpose is to try and avoid sanctions and to get a photo with Trump. That's what Kaya Kallas said. Putin wants to take a picture in Alaska with Trump and avoid new sanctions. That's the whole purpose of this meeting in Alaska. She reminded that Ukraine agreed to an unconditional ceasefire 5 months ago, yet Moscow continues playing games instead of pursuing peace. Ah, yes. The unconditional ceasefire that Zelensky agreed to. She's so simple. She is so simple, that Kaja Kallas. Amazing that she ended up becoming the foreign minister of the European Union. Unbelievable, man. Stunning and brave, Kaja Kallas. Putin just wants a photo with Trump. That's it. That's all he is looking for. Remember the guy in Finland, the protester in Finland from a year ago that was shouting at Ursula when she was speaking in Finland about EU freedom of speech and how the European Union has free speech. And if you were yelling and protesting in Moscow, then Putin would lock you up. And then the police in Finland, as this guy was yelling at Ursula and protesting Ursula, the police in Finland, they grabbed this guy and they carted him away, arrested him and carted him off out of the presentation. Well, he was in court. He was in court. Armando Mema. I was arrested for criticizing Ursula von der Leyen and peacefully protesting. What a joke. The court sentenced me guilty of a crime I did not commit. Free speech disappearing under our eyes in Europe. Finland at Tilna Kesmiki. Thanks for reporting the biggest case of free speech in Europe. It's not over yet. So from what I read about this sentencing, the judge was lecturing this guy about free speech and our democracy. That's what the judge was lecturing him about, because he was speaking freely at an Ursula von der Leyen speech. He was arrested and charged with some sort of a crime, and then the judge started lecturing him about free speech. Anyway, that is an update there. And finally, we have Donald Tusk, who has sounded off on the concert that took place in Poland the other day. And this was a concert where some people in attendance, a small group of people in attendance, they broke out a Banderite flag at this concert in Poland. That red and black Banderite flag, they pulled it out. And this is a big no-no if you're in Poland. A huge insult and travesty to pull out this flag of Bandera, given what Bandera and Ukraine did to Polish people. But these guys, they pulled out this flag and they started celebrating this Bandera flag. And they were deported, from what I understand. 57 people were deported, and 6 Belarusians, 57 Ukrainians and 6 Belarusians faced deportation following disturbances at a rap concert in Warsaw's National Stadium. Polish PM blasts local idiots after neo-Nazi flag scandal. So anyway, the clown world in all of this is that Donald Tusk took to Twitter, took to X, and he posted, the resolution of the Ukrainian war is approaching, so Russia is doing everything to sow discord between Kiev and Warsaw. Anti-Polish gestures by Ukrainians and fueling anti-Ukrainian sentiments in Poland are Putin's scenario orchestrated by foreign agents and local idiots. Always the same ones. Right. Russia did it. It was all part of Putin's plan, because he's getting very close to a resolution with Project Ukraine. He decided to give these concert goers a Bandera flag, and they were going to cause disturbances in order to accomplish what? I don't know. But that is what Tusk posted. What a dumb freaking post from a not very bright Polish prime minister in Donald Tusk. Someone replied on X to Tusk's post by saying a Ukrainian with the Bandera UPA flag in Poland is, of course, Russian propaganda. Of course it is. Of course. It's always Russia. Always Putin, Russia, 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 Russia. Anyway, that is the video. TheDuran.locals.com. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch. We have a coupon for 15 to 30% off various merchandise in our shop. So definitely check that out. I will see everybody tomorrow. Take care.